Hey, hello. So today I'm going to go through the Jewel Knight reveals that we've had yesterday from the time of me uploading this video. Sorry, I was kind of like ill, so I couldn't go through this. I'm sort of still am ill actually right now. But basically, Jewel Knight Alwyn is the, well, retrain of the Ordinal clone, which funny enough we did get an Ordinal in the same set. They're both cards that basically return grade 3s from a specific subclan to the bottom of the deck to give a grade 3 unit from that subclan 5k power and not once per turn. One thing that we're not getting though is the Gansler one by looks of it. So Gansler also had one, but he's a Liberator and Arch Liberators don't really exist anymore, so that one's probably going to get skipped. But we have Ordinal and we have Alwyn from those Brilliant Strike BT14 old era grade 1s. So Alwyn, well, she's basically like a Morvidius. So she can rest herself to put a normal unit back to normal for your deck. So instead of doing the counter blast, because usually you want your counter blast, so you never actually end up using more videos for that skill as often. She can soul charge, and then give body for Jewel Knight's 5k power. And then the other skill is basically when your, well, unit's placed over her, so Vanguard or Rearguard, just like any other V-era Jewel Knight card. You get to look at 2 from top of your deck, and you choose one Jewel Knight and add it to your hand while stacking the other one to both your deck. So you could potentially play grade 1 Perfect Guards as well if you want to add Perfect Guards to your hand, but I don't think it's going to be that popular because there's not really any space, and to be fair, you could just find your PGs probably more naturally just by drawing or spamming drive checks. I think you probably want to have more units, particularly because the deck does do a lot of calling as well, so I'm not really sure. I think you'd rather reserve as many non-attacking units in your trigger slots instead. So I don't think it's as lucky, but it is a line of play that does exist now. So that is basically Alwyn. It's very possible that maybe people will be replacing more videos because of Jewel Knight Christine in premium, because Jewel Knight Christine is very good, especially now that we've got a third Jewel Knight grade 3 to run. She basically gets to reveal a grade 3 from your hand. That includes Heal Guardians as well. So it's sort of similar to like Regalia Stratus, where you might want to play Frigg and Angelica and have the Stratus so you can search for the grade 3 depending on which one's better for the matchup. So it's very good for that. But the only difference is the Stratus doesn't actually reveal grade 3 heals. You have to reveal a Regalia. Whereas the Christine gets to reveal any grade 3s, so you have your heals as well. So it's just very good. I think though you probably want to play Jewel Knight crits, because Jewel Knight crits do add a bit more consistency. Because sometimes you do open like a really bricky hand. Obviously you can't call grade 3s to count them as your 3 or more other Jewel Knights. So you'd have to rely on your other triggers if you can, but obviously you're not playing Jewel Knight triggers for the most part, especially the over trigger. That will never be a Jewel Knight, so there is that as well. And your heals are now grade 3s as well. They're not even Jewel Knights, so even less ways of desperately trying to search for grade 3s that you need. So there is that as well. Then we have Miranda, who's been retrained from Brilliant Strike BT14. Miranda is basically a counter charger, so she's got 2 abilities. She's not actually specific like the old one. So when she attacks while not boosted, which is important because obviously the lock mechanic, if you're self-locking, then you're probably going to be game ready for boosters anyway, so it's not really much of a condition if you're using it that way. But that being said, even if you use it with Salome, for example, you could potentially just not boost on that column. It's not like you're going to be calling 4 cards or 5 cards every game, so sometimes you might decide, okay, I just want to boost this one then. So depending on how smart you are with how you set up attack patterns, it might not be a problem. And then she does a CB1 to choose one of your Vanguards, and until end of battle, she basically gains or loses power to match that unit's power. So use it with a stride, it's going to be big and strong as well. But obviously Astra Reverse, which we'll get to later, can also gain power herself. Then the other skills, when your other unit is placed on this unit's circle, soul charge 1, and if you have no face-up cards in your damage, counter charge 1. So very good for that. Obviously if you ride it, you're getting automatic soul charge and automatic counter charge, so if your opponent tries to damage deny you after you've used Christine or Sword Me or something, then you can just use Miranda and have your CC back, and then just go to Salome, Ashe Reverse, Crystal Lost Dragon, and just do your play with that. So Miranda's very good for that reason. I'm not sure if she's really if she can really be considered a Sword Me replacement, because she kind of helps Sword Me if anything, but I've not really been all that sure about Sybil, to be honest, so it's very possible she might end up eating away at Sybil's slots. I think Lily is a bit too good. I don't think I would take Lily out, but obviously this requires some testing. as well. You could always cut down your copies of Sword Me's and Sybils, maybe, to make room for Miranda. I think Miranda is very handy to have. And then for the rest of the BT14 V-era retrains, we have Ashley Reverse. So Ashley Reverse is Soul Blast 2, lock one for your rears. It's not once per turn, by the way. You choose one of your opponent's front rows and retire it, and then you look at the top 4 of your deck, choose up to one Jewel Knight from among them and call it to rear. So that's pretty useful because, well, you basically build up your field. There's no Counter Blast cost being used, so if you have nothing, you've got something again. And Soul Blast 2 isn't really that costly because it's quite easy to Soul Charging Jewel Knights anyway. You'll be a bit surprised actually how easy Soul Charging is in Jewel Knights. It kind of just comes more naturally if anything. And in premium format we have the Generation Break 1 critical, so if you do happen to run that, you've got another way of getting Soul for your turn 4 players. Obviously she's an act, so her being an act kind of does mean you have to wait until turn 4 to make use of GB1 crits, especially after riding second, because you can't use GB1 crits if you're running to grade 3 and not striding. Also, as I mentioned earlier, the whole Jewel Knight Perfect Guard thing, like this is one of the reasons why you probably don't want to play the Jewel Knight Perfect Guard, is because you do want your Jewel Knight core targets as much as possible, so this is probably one sort of extra reason against it, in that you might also find like just a bunch of random triggers, and then it might just ruin your day a bit if the only normal you can call is a PG. And obviously there's way too many good grade 1s right now. There's like 4 grade 1s you actually want to play as much as you can. On top of that, actually no, 5, because I would still say Cymbelinus would be a good one to tech in as well. And then the next skill is when she attacks, if you have 2 or more locked cards, Camelus 1, search deck for up to 2, grade 2 or lower Jewel Knights. So it's basically like Ashley. Difference is she's on attack, she's not after attack, so you can pass triggers onto your new units, which you couldn't do with the previous Ashley. So that's very useful actually. She's a Camelus 1, that's the downside. Well, depends if you can consider it downside. But counter blasting, obviously now we've got Miranda, which can help with counter charging, so it's probably going to hurt you less now than before to be relying on a CB cost. Besides, you do need your soul for the act skill anyway, and these 2 skills can be used with Crystal Lust as well, which is even more crazy. So you call your 2 Jewel Knights, and then for each of your locked cards she gets 10k power until end of turn. Imagine that with Crystal Lust it gets even more stronger. If you have 3 or more locked cards, until the end of that battle, your opponent cannot call Centaurs from hand to Guardian Circles. So by that point, 4 drives. If you play Force 2, then you also have Force 2, and you're doing Centaur Restrict. So unless you're going against like the new Shadow Paladin G-Guard, for example, then you're pretty much set. Or maybe the Genesis G-Guard, or was it Dark Irregulars or something? Like there's some G-Guards that reduce criticals as well. So those would be her weakness, more or less. I think P-Clan Collection is sort of going to stop this card from being too insane, thankfully, because they've introduced alternate ways of guarding now. So there are some advantages here for dealing against this card. But I think Ashley Reverse is pretty solid as well, because she doesn't require the opponent being grade 3 or greater to do the good skill. So Salome is kind of vulnerable to requiring the opponent being on grade 3 or greater. So whenever you have to ride up, it's kind of awkward with Salome. It does feel like sometimes just vanilla riding. You could always call over, but it does feel like you're losing out on advantage. The other thing is although she says called 2 grade 2 or lower Jewel Knights, the thing is that if you have Christine and a spare counterblast, obviously Miranda might be able to help you with that, then you can then add your Ashley onto Rear Guard, so you can get even more attacks as well. So you can just Ashley into Ashley. So I think the reverse is definitely something to consider as well in deck building, and she's searchable via Christine, so you could just tech 1 if you really have to. You can always just tech 1 or 2 or whatever. At least it's searchable, right? So if you don't want to play too many grade 3s, you can always do a split. That's also one kind of possible way to go. I don't know what people's final list might end up being. I don't know if 8 grade 3 is optimal. I don't know if it's worth considering more. But if you want to do less, you know now that you have ways of searching your text. So that's always a good option to have. Anyway, just like with regarding Stride Assist as well to some extent. So that is pretty much it for Jewel Knights. That is my thoughts on the new cards, and I guess, yeah, can't wait to see. We do have reprints of Clan Selection Jewel Knights, so anyone that kind of overpaid for cards, I'm sorry for your loss. To be honest with you, I bought the whole clan selection, like 4 boxes, because I don't want to pay the stupid prices, the sort of scalping prices, I would say, because the set is pretty good value. So you might as well just buy the sealed products instead of paying these ridiculous prices that I swear like 4 boxes can pretty much just get you Dual Knights plus way more in equivalent. It just feels like. So they're definitely way too overpriced in the secondary market. Anyway, that's pretty much it for me, and have a good day. Goodbye.